When I saw your channel's name pop up, I couldn't resist. I dropped everything I was doing and dove right in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another explosive episode on Infidel's channel. Today, I have a story that will shake you to your core, a tale of betrayal that completely changed my life. You won't believe what happened. I toyed with my stepfather's emotions, leading him on until he fell in love with me. But this was no ordinary love story, it was part of my calculated revenge against my mother. She deserved every bit of what came next, and now, for the first time, I'm ready to reveal everything to you. Don't miss a second because the story will leave you speechless. My name is Elizabeth. I'm 24 years old, and I live in Brownsville with my mother in the small house my father left us when he passed away. My dad was a teacher, and his death was sudden. Pneumonia took him from us just over 6 years ago. His loss was a devastating blow to our family, but no one took it harder than my mother. She unraveled, slowly losing her grip on reality. But what really destroyed her was learning, soon after his death, that he had been having affairs with other women. It was as if her world crumbled twice over. Since then, she's been perpetually angry and bitter, cursing my father's memory almost every day. I was always close to my father, and I couldn't accept how she handled things. In my mind, what was the point of clinging to that hurt? He was gone. I defended him because, despite his mistakes, he was still my dad. And that was the final straw for my mother. Once, she aimed all her fury at him, but now I was a target. I became the victim of her frustrations, and home life turned into a battlefield. Things took a darker turn when my mother started getting jealous of my romantic life. I was just beginning to date a guy from college when I came home one day and found her in the kitchen with him, on the verge of kissing. The shock paralyzed me. I immediately confronted them, demanding answers. Both of them denied anything was going on, but I knew what I saw. She did it on purpose to make me feel betrayed, just as she had with my father. Time passed, but the wound festered. In one of our most heated arguments, she finally admitted what I had already suspected. She confessed that she kissed my ex to teach me a lesson about defending cheaters like my father, who was still the focus of her seething resentment even after death. In that moment, I realized she didn't care about teaching me anything, she just wanted me to suffer. She wanted me to feel the same pain she thought she'd endured because of my dad. It was one of those fights that leave scars, the kind you never fully heal from. After that, our relationship was ruined for good. We spoke only when necessary, living like strangers under the same roof. My mother changed after that. She started going out more, obsessing over her appearance, trying to look like she was still in her 30s. It was as if she was desperately trying to erase the years and live a life free of responsibilities. But what hurt me the most was her utter disregard for me. She began bringing home men she met at bars or parties, parading them through our house like it was the most normal thing in the world. The home that had once felt safe became a chaotic nightmare. Our relationship had hit rock bottom when my mother introduced her new boyfriend, my soon-to-be stepfather. That's when the real drama began. He was much younger than her, just 30 to her 52. They worked at the same company, but I only found out they were dating when she announced that he was moving in with us. I was shocked. How could she not tell me about a relationship, let alone spring this on me? When I questioned her, she barely cared about my feelings, almost daring me to leave the house. It was as if she was deliberately pushing me away, so she could live freely without having to deal with me. But I wasn't going to leave. I decided I'd stay and make her pay for everything she'd done. From that moment, I knew what I had to do. I would seduce her new boyfriend, my stepfather, as revenge. A few days after my mother told me he was moving in, Jackson, the man in question, finally arrived. I was in my room texting a friend when I heard their laughter coming from the living room. I had no interest in seeing him, but then I remembered my plan. I changed into a tight pair of gym shorts and a low-cut white blouse, tying my hair up casually and applying a bright red lipstick. Ready to execute my plan, I confidently walked toward the living room. As I passed the kitchen, where my mother was making food, she threw a lecture my way, telling me to be polite and not cause any drama. She was tired of me being a spoiled brat. I promised her I wouldn't cause trouble, but inside I was focused on my real goal. I entered the living room, and there he was, Jackson. My initial assumptions that he'd be unattractive were way off. He was a bit shy, polite, and had a charming face framed by glasses and a well-groomed beard. I sat next to him, casually throwing out a question about whether he and my mother planned on getting married, given that he was moving in. He blushed slightly and explained that it was only temporary. He bought an apartment that would be ready in a few weeks, and until then, he was staying with us. Why hadn't my mother mentioned this? It was also unnecessary, the drama, the tension, but I didn't let that derail me. I grabbed a strawberry from the fridge, slowly biting into it in a way I knew would grab his attention. It worked. Jackson couldn't stop sneaking glances at me. Just then, my mother entered, bringing in a plate of snacks, oblivious to the tension between us. I left the room soon after, but I caught Jackson's eye again as I passed him, deliberately brushing up against him. I could tell by his reaction that my plan was working. Back in my room, I laughed to myself. It was almost too easy. Men were so predictable. And so began my game of seduction. I kept playing my cards carefully, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My mother was so wrapped up in her relationship that she didn't see what was happening right under her nose. But I wasn't going to stop until I got exactly what I wanted. I got out of bed and went to the bathroom. When I came out, I was startled to bump into Jackson. I almost fell backwards. But he quickly caught me in his arms, preventing me from falling and hurting myself. I thanked him and we laughed about the situation, breaking the ice a little. As we talked, I began to wonder why he was there, since he and my mother were supposed to be at work at that time. But as we talked, I noticed that his eyes wouldn't move away from my pajamas. It was as if he was completely hypnotized, trapped in that vision, knowing that my plan was moving slowly. I decided to be much bolder. In the middle of our conversation, I asked with a smile on my face if he liked my pajamas, while I smoothed my hands down my body, as if I wanted him to really notice everything that was there in front of him without missing a thing. The tension in the air increased, and I could feel that there was something different about the way he looked at me. This was the moment I've been waiting for, and I was determined to enjoy every second of it. He then answered me in a relaxed way, complimenting my pajamas, saying that they were nice and looked great on me. He asked if I trained to maintain those curves, commenting that it was difficult to find a body like that in person, saying that he only saw women like that on social media. I could tell he was a little embarrassed and tried to change the subject, explaining that he hadn't gone to work because he'd taken the day off to get the key to his house and sort out some matters, such as documents and licenses. I didn't care about the keys, and immediately turned my attention to my body, and decided this time to be more daring. So you watch beautiful women on your cell phone? And has my mother ever caught you in the act? She's very jealous, you know. The provocation caused a smile to appear on his face, and I could feel the tension in the air increase. Jackson looked a little surprised, but his expression said he was enjoying himself. This exchange of words was exactly the direction I wanted, and the atmosphere between us was changing, creating a more spicy, flirtatious mood that I was eager to explore. Before continuing with this true account of infidelity, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. My stepfather then replied that he couldn't see anything near my mother, because she was a bit jealous and a bit crazy, as he put it. So I jokingly asked him to keep it a secret, and commented that I was great at this sort of thing. To spice up the conversation even more, I turned around provocatively and asked if my body really looked like those women he saw on his cell phone. He looked me up and down, and I could feel the tension in the air when he said that I was even prettier than them. Much prettier. It brought a sincere smile to my face. I asked him if he really thought so, and to tease him a little, I joked that I also thought he was handsome, and even attractive. Without hesitation, I added, if you weren't my stepfather, I'd kiss you easily. His expression changed, and I could see a mixture of surprise and interest in his eyes. Then he widened his eyes and asked seriously, would you stay with me if I were single? I answered quickly without hesitation, yes, no problem at all. You're definitely my kind of guy. I took the opportunity to say that I didn't have a boyfriend, and that I hadn't been with anyone for a long time, since I was always at college studying. I added that I didn't have much time to meet people. I concluded by saying that despite being alone, it was getting harder and harder to deal with. I looked at him with a mischievous smile and said, you know, it makes me want to do certain things. The teasing tone in my voice was clear, and I could see that he was intrigued. The atmosphere was charged with tension, and I knew I was stirring his feelings in a way that could take us to a new level. He was bolder than I'd expected, and that helped me more than I'd imagined. In fact, that conversation was the starting point for everything. After what he heard, Jackson asked if he could help me in any way, saying that he was there to support me in whatever I needed. I looked him right in the eye and with a teasing, bulging smile said that he could help relieve me, that I was tense and needed a massage. He smiled back and agreed, but made a point of telling me that it had to be before my mother arrived. So as not to make a nuisance of myself, I told him to relax and that we'd do it right away. I took him by the arm and we headed for the living room. When we got there, I lay down on the sofa and asked him to start by massaging my feet. Jackson began to massage my feet, while looking at me in a different way, as if he already knew what I was trying to do. It was clear that this man, who had previously been shy and bashful, was now loosening up, showing a confidence I hadn't expected. I knew we were about to cross a line of no return. After a few minutes, I asked him to take the massage up a notch. As my legs were aching, his touch was relaxing. But the tension between us grew by the second. I couldn't take it any longer and bluntly said, "Kiss me now." Those words were exactly what Jackson had been waiting for. I could see the confirmation in his eyes, and his expression change, revealing restrained desire. He looked at me for a few seconds, assessing the moment, before moving closer and giving me a soft kiss. But I didn't want just a kiss, I wanted something more. So I grabbed him by the back of the neck and pulled him closer, kissing him for real, just the way I wanted, his lips molded to mine, with an intensity that made my heart soar. That moment was everything I had planned and more. The kiss deepened, and I could feel the chemistry between us intensifying, as if everything around us had disappeared. It was just me, him, and the desire that was finally coming true. I decided that we weren't just going to kiss. With an ardent and provocative smile, I told him that I was ready to do whatever he wanted, and that I really wanted it as soon as I'd finished talking. We started kissing madly again, lost in the intensity of that moment. On the living room sofa, every touch, every sigh, was as if the passion we had repressed had finally found freedom after we finally pulled away. Still panting, he became a little worried, saying that we shouldn't have done it, that he hadn't thought through the consequences. I quickly tried to calm him down, replying that there was no turning back now. I looked him in the eye and said that I'd really enjoyed it and wanted to do it again. "Every night now, you won't escape me," I joked, but with a serious tone. I tried to reassure him that I was as involved in this as he was, and that this would be our little secret. That moment was more than just passion. It was a new beginning full of possibilities and, of course, a mystery that only the two of us would share. He seemed to calm down and let out a half smile, saying that we needed to keep a low profile when my mother was around, taking advantage of the fact that we were in that situation. Together, I decided to ask him what he really wanted with my mother, considering that he was much younger than her and would soon be moving into a new apartment. He should really get a younger woman, shouldn't he then? He looked me in the eye and asked if I wanted to be his. That statement took me by surprise, and at the same time made me reflect on how superficial men can be. My stepfather, who until yesterday had been in love with my mother, now seemed to want to swap his wife for his daughter. This not only perplexed me, but also gave me a feeling of power. It was obvious that he was already in love with me, and that it would be easy to manipulate him. The anger and pain I felt turned into a form of revenge. I realized that I could use a situation to my advantage in a way I had never imagined. I told him that we could talk about it, but that he would have to let go of my mother. I wouldn't stay with him, knowing that he was still kissing her. Raphael then asked me for a break, mentioning that he wasn't even going to return to the company where they worked. He told me that he had been offered a job at another company where he would earn more money, and told me that if I agreed to stay with him, he would pay me back, taking advantage of the situation. I kissed him on the lips and said I would think about it, but warned him that he should always visit me at night when my mother was asleep. After that, I went to my room, full of anticipation and happy with my plan. It was a chance to make up for the pain my mother had made me suffer. All these years, during the days he stayed at home, until everything was ready in his apartment, we stayed together every night. Everything was done in secret, away from my mother's ears. And the adrenaline of living that situation only increased the intensity of what we were doing. I knew it would change everything, and the feeling of control over the situation made me even more excited. Finally, after weeks of anticipation, he moved into the apartment. A few days before the move, Jackson commented to me that things weren't going well between him and my mother. He mentioned that she was always fighting with him, and sometimes swearing at him. I could hear everything from my room. Then he shared his plan to move into the new apartment and break up with my mother. Once and for all, he was determined. And that intrigued me. Jackson even told me that when I wanted to stay there with him, all I had to do was text him. He even asked me to consider living in his new apartment. The idea of living this new reality alongside him excited me. What had started out as revenge was now turning into something I really wanted. And the possibility of finally having a place of my own seemed irresistible. I said I would think about it. But I made it clear that I would visit Jackson. Almost every day after he moved out, my mother got worse. She started drinking more and getting even more nervous. But to be honest, I didn't care. I had finally gotten my revenge. And the idea of moving in with Jackson, who until then had been my stepfather, made me excited. I visited his new apartment countless times. And at each meeting, he asked me to consider moving in with him. Despite all this excitement, I'm still undecided. I can no longer stand staying at home with my mother, who seems increasingly lost and stressed. The situation is complicated, and I don't know exactly what to do. If you have any suggestions or advice for me, please leave them in the comments. Thanks for listening and see you next time.